It's Lucy Litch, and this is Tiny House Conversations. It's the Australian-based podcast where I interview experienced tiny houses, tiny builders, and adventurers in the tiny world so you can discover how to create, build, and transition into tiny life. Hey, it's Lucy, back with another Tiny House Conversation. And on the show today, I'm speaking with Matt Decarne, who is the CEO of Elsewhere Pods. Elsewhere Pods are prefabricated, fully modular and customisable outdoor studios and tiny homes. Their mission is to develop a luxury ecotourism industry in Australia and alleviate the pressure on housing and accommodation affordability. And in this conversation, we talk about Elsewhere Pods' mission and the different purposes their pods and structures can be used for, how they're different to what else is out there in the modular building and eco-accommodation space, the different structures and tiny house models Elsewhere Pods offers and the process to work with them as a customer, how they help solve different struggles customers may experience, such as finance, delivery, site access, building permits, council regulations, and much more. Now, Matt has a generous offer for listeners of Tiny House Conversations, so you'll want to stick around to the end of the podcast to hear what that is. Matt and Elsewhere Pods are approaching things differently and doing some great things in this space. So, on to this Tiny House Conversation with Matt. Hey, Matt, welcome to Tiny House Conversations. It's so good to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. Really excited to have a chat.
Yeah, me too. So you're the CEO of Elsewhere Pods, and what I'd love to do is just start by sharing a bit about your background and how Elsewhere Pods came to be, especially crossing over into this tiny house space.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I guess growing up in Byron Bay, there's always that pull towards ecotourism, given that, that industry has supported that community for, several generations. I guess that has always been part of my passion. After time, I moved to Melbourne and got an education, joined the corporate world and developed a profession in international trade law and economics. But the pull was always really strong to do something with more impact broadly on society. And my mum, who's still up in that area of, the Byron region, she had some issues around housing affordability, and she actually lost her home, the majority of her possessions during the recent floods. That was a really strong pull for me to go, okay, I'm going to transition to do something that has, a bit more impact and be part of the solution. So I ended up connecting with a former architect and one of the investors for Elsewhere Pods, and together we've co-developed and commercialized Elsewhere Pods.
Oh, wow. I'm sorry to hear about your mom. I feel like obviously so many people got impacted and lost a lot of things. I was actually up there during the round of the first floods and I saw some of the aftermath of that. And I guess it's like, it seems to be it has been a turning point for a lot of people, whether they're affected or whether they knew people that are affected, of like, well, how can I contribute to in a more meaningful way, like what you're talking about, making a bit more of an impact. So that's really amazing to hear how that's kind of come about. And I'd love to know, or if you're able to tell us a bit more about Elsewhere Pods, like the mission behind it and what you guys do.
The company's mission is definitely an extension of my own. We're seeking to develop a luxury ecotourism industry and I guess in turn relieve pressure on housing affordability. Traditionally, ecotourism's kind of meant, camping or low impact caravanning, van life, as you'll know. And more recently, glamping and cabins starting to go mainstream in the kind of mid-market. So we believe that in order to get kind of mass market adoption or demand take up of ecotourism as opposed to traditional tourism, there's kind of a need for a premium product which really kind of catches the imagination of its occupants. And we hope that by developing dedicated ecotourism accommodations in regional and high tourism areas, that there's less need for local property owners to, rent their houses on short-term accommodation platforms. And therefore, you kind of increase the supply of housing for families and workers in those regions.
And what kinds of people are you typically attracting, or like who are you serving in terms of the marketplace? You know, whether it's, I know in tiny houses often it's a wide demographic of people, whether it's families, singles, couples, retirees, divorcees, and everyone in between. And so yeah, who are you guys serving?
There's a design solution for just about every use case. The beauty of that kind of modular prefabricated system is that fully customizable, and we can produce a footprint that allows for a little bit more livability or is more minimalist and bespoke. That modular system allows us to be really flexible. We've had customers who have used them as home offices, Airbnb accommodations, pool houses, tiny homes, corporate meeting rooms, and we're now having a lot of inquiries from customers wanting to build larger footprint homes as well. So, yeah, look, there's basically a elsewhere pod for just about every use case.
Wow, that's really amazing. And I love the look of your structures, you know, just seeing like what you guys have created there. I feel like they're quite unique and really beautiful. And it is great that you've kind of got something for pretty much everyone, I guess, in different contexts. You know, I'd love to, I guess, switch into hearing a little bit more about those different type of structures that you offer. So can you just share more about, yeah, like you mentioned like luxury eco-accommodation, studio offices, tiny homes. Can you tell us a little bit maybe more about the tiny house models that you build specifically, whether it's the sizes, the base price ranges, other types of features, and anything you can share with us?
Yeah, absolutely. Our standard footprint is 2.4 meters wide, and the tiny home models basically start from 6 meters in length and range up to 12 meters. We can do double wide designs as well, so you can jump up to 4.8 meters in width, and technically any multiple of 2.4 meters as well. So quite flexible in terms of the footprint that you're able to achieve for, you know, a tiny or even a small home. The tiny home package that we offer includes a small kitchenette, bathroom, split system air conditioning, and delivery and installation is included for free in metro areas. In terms of the pricing of where our tiny homes start from, it's roughly in the range of about $65,000 plus GST for your 6 meter by 2.4 meter tiny home.
Okay. And am I right in saying that most, if not all of your tiny homes are actually not on a trailer, but they're more of a foundation?
We originally designed them to be a beautiful self-standing structure that can integrate with a range of different environments. The pod structure does visually seem to kind of elevate or, you know, hover above the landscape to some degree and really disappears with the landscape, given all of the glass and the, you know, the angular construction. We offer solutions that are low impact in terms of the footing systems, and we also do offer them on trailers for, you know, for customers who are looking to avoid the pitfalls of building permits
Yeah.
and those kinds of things.
Yeah, because is it the same for the pod structures? Like if someone wanted a tiny home but it wasn't on a trailer, that in terms of the council regulations, is it then building towards the National Construction Code as well as needing like a development approval from the local council, building permits and that kind of thing, especially if someone's maybe wanting to use it for long-term occupancy?
Absolutely, yeah. So all of our designs are compliant with NCC and Australian standards. So we don't really introduce any elements or options that would take us away from compliance. And we also have an in-house team that can handle building permits for our customers. So on a kind of a case-by-case basis, if our customer, you know, would like to go down the path of a traditional build in terms of building permits, we're able to assist them along that process.
Oh, that's really great to know that you guys help with that, because I think just observing the tiny house space and even being involved in it myself from experience, like that is one of the biggest grey areas, and it really depends on the council as well as what state you're in, and being able to help people with that process, I think is like a really great service. So that's fantastic. And I'm curious because we are seeing lots of different types of structures out there in the marketplace now for affordable housing or offices or home offices and everything in between, modular homes and sustainable eco type homes. What makes you guys different?
There's a few obvious things that are visually striking, but there's also some really cool innovations on the back end. The first thing is obviously that super striking design aesthetic. You really need to kind of see it to appreciate it. It's a very futurist, ultra minimalist design language. And, most people who step inside say it's unlike anything they've seen before. So I would definitely encourage people to at least go check it out. On the back end, we've kind of approached the tiny home industry from first principles. We have a little bit of that second mover advantage where we see all of the challenges, and we wanted to launch what we're doing from day one in solving as many of those problems for our customers from the outset. So on our back end, we've got a really innovative supply chain solution that's totally different to industry norms. What we actually do is we prefabricate all of the materials in our factory, and then we do a test assembly in the factory to make sure it all fits together really nicely and beautifully. And then we actually flat pack it down into crates, a little bit like IKEA furniture, and we deliver those crates directly to the customer's site. Our team then comes out and builds the pod for the customer, usually within 3 to 4 days for our tiny home range. That whole process only takes 12 to 14 weeks. By flat packing products, we can service customers Australia-wide, and we can even get to those really difficult to access properties. If a small truck can get in there, we're good to go.
I didn't realize that you guys did that and then had the build sort of kind of completed on site. That's really interesting. And I love the description of like the futuristic type of feel, I suppose, because when I was like looking into what you guys are doing, I was like, there's something, and I couldn't find the word for it, but I think that's really effective. And I can see like just how immaculately architectural it all is too. And just there talking about building materials, I'd love to know just some examples of like the types of building materials that you may commonly use for your tiny homes specifically, let's say.
Yeah, so the real benefit of our, modular system is that in terms of materials, we've estimated that we use less than 1% of the parts and components of traditional builds. And this means that there's a lot less that can go wrong. And even if something does go wrong, you can just replace that one particular part or component without needing to, renovate a whole building or pull down roofs and large packages of building. In terms of the materials themselves, the frame is constructed with a titanium magnesium alloy. So it's super strong, super lightweight, and it obviously means that there's less energy going into the production and transport of those materials than, traditional building types. The glass, there's a lot of glass, obviously. Those glass panels are all double glazed. They're thermally broken. They have a low E treatment film as well for increased thermal performance. And I suppose that's really important because when you're designing what is effectively a beautiful glass box, you need to be using the best materials for that. With the insulation panels that we do on our ceilings, sidewalls, and floors, they're a sandwich formation, which includes dual panel and an air insulation gap between the two. And actually, a lot of people don't realize that you absolutely need that air insulation gap for that insulation performance because it reduces the conductive heat transfer. Yeah, I'm sure your well-researched listeners will be across all of that.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned thermally broken windows because that's something, I've done an episode before with a naturopath on mold prevention in tiny homes, and that's something that she had, and I've done consulting with her too. She's recommended that several times, that's something, if it's possible to get in a tiny home or any kind of home, really, any kind of building, that from a mold prevention perspective, which I know is important to a lot of people listening to the show, having access to thermally broken windows is a great thing. And you just mentioned before about how you guys build things in flat packs. You have your team come out to site and then complete the build there. Do your team also help connect to the resources, things like power, water, and sewage, or how does all of that work? And are you offering things like off-grid solutions?
What we offer is a plug and play solution. We can basically integrate the pod with whatever services that our customers have on site. The standard configuration just plugs into a 15 amp power supply and, with standard wastewater systems. But we do offer a whole range of off-grid options as well. We've partnered with a bunch of, trusted names in the industry to supply and install these. And we can also connect to whatever off-grid solutions that our customers want to see as well. Some of the things that we can offer are compost toilets, your grey water systems, solar. We can do solar trailers, rainwater tanks, water collection, electric heat pumps for hot water. So a whole range of different efficient and sustainable solutions for off-grid.
That's great, because I think that's always a question is too from a lot of people is like, how do I connect to the different resources? And a lot of people do want to go off grid. So it's great to know that you have those options. And you did also mention earlier about being able to customize. So how much customization is possible? Because obviously there's a lot of moving parts when there is customization, and changing one thing might then impact something else. And a lot of companies won't do it. Like there are a few that I know, including one that I worked with, but it's not always the norm. So I'm curious about what that's like for you guys.
Yeah, look, we're all about finding the balance between a really simple and streamlined, ordering and manufacturing process, but also a high degree of customization, because for us, what we found is no use case is exactly the same. So basically what we do in our first design meeting with the customer is we say, hey, tell us what the dream looks like and we'll go from there. What that means is, we've got a whole bunch of different options that we can up spec or down spec our products. So we can do things like decks, rooftop balconies, motorized louver pergolas, indoor-outdoor kitchen bars, bifold doors, roller blinds, cabinetries, kitchens, bathrooms, all totally customizable. And it really comes back to that totally modular system. We actually think that we might be Australia's first player that is truly and totally modular. So every panel that you see in our design can be substituted in for another configuration.
And in terms of like if someone's looking at wanting to maybe finance because they might not be able to afford something straight away, is that available for your customers?
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. As I mentioned, we're approaching the industry from first principles and looking to resolve that challenge of financing, which can be a real minefield for people in our industry. So one innovation that we've introduced is our leasing arrangements that we offer customers. Essentially what happens with that is we take 15% deposit, which covers some of our logistics and installation expenses. And then the customer can make either weekly or monthly repayments for a minimum lease term. After that lease term, they can either choose to make a buyout payment, a little bit like some car leases that you can get, or they can just keep renting it if that's part of their operating costs in their little business model that they're doing. Or they can even choose to decommission it, which means that we'll come and take it away. And customers might want to do that if they're looking to upgrade and go a little bit bigger, or it's a temporary solution while they're looking to build their dream home, or their circumstances have changed. It kind of means that we can get people into a tiny home or start a little ecotourism business, without that really large upfront expense. And also, it gives them peace of mind knowing that they have that flexibility.
Yeah, definitely. Because even though this is a more affordable housing space, the reality is that it can still be quite a large sum of money for people to fork out in one go. And as you said, also, if they're maybe thinking of using these structures as businesses or whatever the purpose might be. So that's, I think, really, really helpful to know. And I'm also curious, Matt, what would you say would be some of the most popular models based on, the customers that you've had, whether it's tiny homes or even the other types of structures that you do?
We've had a lot of interest from customers wanting to use the smaller footprint models as home offices. Working from home has obviously since COVID become, real movement. We've had customers using them as pool houses. Obviously, we're very focused on servicing and growing the ecotourism industry as a broader movement as well. And then I guess that tiny homes, if you are adding a few more customizations by introducing a bit more storage and cabinetry and all of the things that we all need day to day, then I guess that modular system and that high level of customization allows for that real flexibility. There's one project that we're working on at the moment, which is super exciting. We actually won an Airbnb global design competition called the Oh My God Fund. Airbnb is actually funding a concept building in Daylesford, Victoria for us. So this will kind of showcase what can be achieved with modular design if you're unlimited by imagination and obviously, you've got the budget to do so. It's called the Kangaroo, and it's a 2-story, fully mirror glass, cantilevered, stacked pod structure with a rooftop balcony overlooking a natural kangaroo habitat. It's going to act as like a reverse zoo where the occupants will kind of observe wildlife in its natural environment, but also maintain that high level of premium fixtures and fittings and all of the comforts that modern life demands.
Yeah, and it looks really, really beautiful. And are people going to be able to, do you guys have models where people can come and actually have a look at them in person or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got displays in Byron Bay. We've got a display in Melbourne, and then we've got a few customer installations in Sydney and Adelaide as well as a few others in regional areas around the country. What we actually find is our customers love the product so much that they become advocates for us and they want to show it off to people. So, we never have any issue with booking an inspection at a customer installation. So, we've been really well supported.
Ah, that's so good. And if someone is interested in working with you as a customer, can you let us know just a bit about what that process looks like? Whether it's whether they want to customize something or whether they just want to have, one of your base structures.
Essentially, what we normally do is we'll book an inspection at one of our displays, and whether that's physically or virtually, we try and get them through to be able to look and touch and feel the products. Then what we do is we book them in for a design meeting with our architectural designer. And in that meeting, we kind of draw things up live for them. We make a few customizations. And from there, we're able to produce a quote. Once that customer is ready to go, whether they're seeking building permits or, they're doing something a little bit more streamlined, we take a deposit. And that deposit's usually 30%, and that will place the order into production. So 12 to 14 weeks after production commences, we're on site installing it. We've tried to find that balance between customization and streamlining things as much as we can, because we obviously understand that it's a really complex process. It's a complex industry. There's a lot of barriers. So we really try to reduce those barriers where we can.
Yeah, that's great. I can feel that you guys are sort of just really trying to solve the different problems that people might come up against, or the different sticking points that might be a little bit frustrating to really help them with that. So that's fantastic. And do you have a current lead time, or is there a waiting list? Or if someone say, listen to this and they're like, okay, I feel like I want to go with one of the Elsewhere pod structures, like how long would they have to? I mean, you did say the 14 weeks or something, but yeah, do you have like a waiting list?
No waiting list. I suppose it's our lead time is more closely related to the level of customizations. If you're buying, one of our close to off-the-shelf products, you're always going to get it finished installation a little bit quicker. Right now, just because we're still, on the back end of that Christmas and New Year period, we're probably closer towards the 14 weeks. But as we move through clearing some of that backlog, we'll be back down to the 12 weeks in no time for our standard range. And then something that's, really bespoke, a lot of customization, you might be looking at 14 to 16 weeks.
Yeah, that makes sense, because obviously there's a lot more things to consider. And you mentioned also before about, we're talking about delivery and shipping and, getting a truck in there for site access and all of that. So I'm just curious as well, do you guys have recommendations for customers, like if they're needing to prepare their site for delivery of whatever structure they're going to have? I know for me, like having a tiny home and being on rural land, that I ended up getting an excavator to come out and sort of level out the land and put some aggregate on the land as well, so that the foundation is really stable to putting the tiny house on. But do you recommend, and other things too, but do you recommend things for preparing the site?
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely when you're going with a trailer, you want to have a really firm, packed surface. And, there's plenty of resources, and you guys have been a fantastic resource on that and making sure you get that right. When it's not on the trailer, then we've got a bunch of different options that we can provide to our customers. We've got a bracket system that we've designed that integrates really beautifully with the pod, and then a range of different footing systems. So something that's quite cool that we've partnered with a screw pile company to co-develop, an integrated system. And that would basically mean that there's a lot less site preparation that customers will need to do. They will just utilize screws or extenders at different lengths to make sure that the pod itself is sitting level, but it hasn't actually impacted the land. And, you don't need to be pulling up that natural environment. With the flat packing system that we use, it's actually pretty interesting to note that a lot of people don't realize that around about 30 to 40% of tiny home usually is taken up with just logistics costs. So customers will definitely need to make sure that they're budgeting for, that logistics cost. Whereas, if you move towards that flat pack system that we utilize, our logistics costs are, down to around about 10% of the purchase price. So what that actually means is that we're able to not only pass those savings on to customers, but we're also able to specify higher quality materials at, really competitive prices.
That's a really good point, actually, because I think we've spoken about it on the show a few times, is that, once you pay for whatever structure you're having, whether it's a tiny home or something else, that's not the end price of everything. There are a lot of logistics to consider, whether it's preparing the site, whether it's getting different tradespeople to come in and help with setting up, whether it's other types of hidden costs that you need in order to be able to set yourself up fully, so that you can either start living in it, start using it for whatever purpose it might be used for. So that's a really great point. And you mentioned the Airbnb thing before with the kangaroo. Are there any other projects you're working on, or anything else that's coming up for you that you want to share with everyone?
There's a whole bunch of different cool projects that we're doing at the moment. We're moving into events. So you might be able to see a few Elsewhere pods in and around your town going forward. We're doing lots of cool partnerships with different organizations. Caravan parks have been reaching out to us to create and offer a luxury version of, those traditional cabins and footprints. Something really cool is we're doing a rooftop balcony on a 8-meter double wide in the next month or so. And
Wow.
So I'm really excited to be able to get some photos of that and share that with our community.
Oh, that'll be great. Will you be posting it on your social channels?
Yeah, we will. So
Yeah,
definitely stay tuned.
stay tuned for that. I know that you have a special offer for listeners of the podcast, but before we share about that, is there anything else that you feel like we haven't covered today around Elsewhere Pods, or what you guys are doing, or even this luxury eco tourism space that you might want to leave our listeners with?
I feel like, we've really covered the broad array of things that we're trying to do in the marketplace. We're definitely very much like approaching the whole industry from first principles. So it's often quite surprising to our customers about, how we do things. And it's funny, a lot of customers will say, no, you can't do that, or that's not the way things are done. And we go, okay, well, I appreciate really well researched, but it's often a process of actually unlearning to then, I guess, understand how our system works. So I'm not a building and construction person myself. I come from a finance and law background. And I guess, it's kind of an advantage having fresh eyes on a new industry, but it's often a little bit confounding for people.
Yeah. I guess sometimes it's like, and this might get a bit philosophical, but we can be so used to things being a certain way. And then when something comes in that's different or is disruptive or just a different way of doing things, that, yeah, sometimes it can be, not for everyone, of course, people receive that kind of stuff in a different way. And do you want to let everyone know about this special offer for those listening to the Tiny House Conversations?
Yeah, absolutely. So Elsewhere Pods is offering a $500 discount to all Tiny House Conversation listeners. So when you reach out to one of our team, be sure to mention that you're a fan of the show, and yeah, you'll definitely receive that $500 discount.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. That's really generous of you guys to offer that. And do you want to let everyone know, Matt, where the best place to come and find you guys, connect with you online, see what you're up to, or even, book in a call to get the ball rolling?
Yeah, so our website is elsewherepods.com, and you can find a brochure on our main landing page. Yeah, we've included a whole bunch of information in that brochure, even down to all the options and pricing. We want to be fully transparent with our customers so that they can do all of their planning and kind of start designing the dream in their mind before they even reach out to us. So definitely jump onto the website. In terms of the projects we're working on and some of those partnerships and some of the design inspiration, definitely jump onto our Instagram. Our handle is at elsewhere_pods. And you can also find us on Facebook with plenty of info and updates.
And I'll put a link in the show notes at tinyhouseconversations.com for all of those channels. And will you be going to any of the Tiny Homes Expos this year?
Yeah, absolutely. We try to get out to as many of them as we can. There is the Geelong Tiny Home Expo coming up. I think that's in late March, maybe early April. And so, yeah, we're definitely going to be taking our 8-meter tiny home on wheels display down to that. So, yeah, really encourage people to come out, say hello, touch and feel it. It is real, it's very striking design, but a lot of people think maybe this is too good to be true. So come in and stand in it with us and have a chat about your project.
Oh, that sounds great. I've spoken to so many different tiny house builders on the show, and obviously I see what's happening in the tiny house space, especially in the last few years. And often we can sometimes see a lot of similar things being done by different companies, or everyone seems to be influenced by the next. And I feel like your designs and your structures are just unlike anything that I've seen in this space. So, which, credit to you guys. And everyone's doing things in their own way, calling upon their own experience and expertise. And I just love seeing like just lots of different options for people out there, because there is going to be something for everyone, and everyone's going to resonate with a different style, a different builder, a different experience, or whatever it might be. So yeah, it's really cool to see what you guys are doing, and to be able to actually go and to the Tiny Homes Expos, because I know that those have been really, Faye at the Tiny Homes Expos are doing things really, really well. And I think that's one of the best places that people can actually go and say, okay, can I actually see myself living in this? Or can I actually see this being a home office, or whatever the situation might be? And I guess if you're ever at any of the ones that I end up going to, I'm not sure what I'm going to, but if we're at the same one, I'll definitely come up and say hi in person. Yeah, I just want to say thank you as well for your time today, Matt. It's been really great to get to know a bit more about what you're doing with Elsewhere Pods. And thank you so much for your time today and for sharing.
Thank you so much for having me, Lucy. It's a really great, tight-knit community that we're a part of. You're providing really valuable resources for people. So I've definitely learned a lot from your podcast as well. Really appreciate what you're doing, and keep up the great work.
Oh, thank you for saying that. I really appreciate that. it's nice to hear feedback like that. And yeah, also, can't wait to see what happens for you guys with Elsewhere Pods later this year and beyond. And if you're listening to us at home, thank you so much for being here. Make sure you go check out what Matt and Elsewhere Pods are doing. Again, those links will be at tinyhouseconversations.com. And stay tuned next Thursday for the new episode of Tiny House Conversations. I'll see you next time. Thanks again for listening. And if you enjoyed the conversation today, you found it valuable, and you want to support the podcast, the best way you can do that is to share the love. That way I can keep bringing you more tiny house conversations to help you on your own tiny journey. So here are 3 ways that you can support the podcast. Number 1, if you have a friend or family member that you feel would benefit from hearing these conversations, feel free to share it with them, email them, text them, send them a telegram, do whatever you need to do to share it with them. Number 2, if you hit the subscribe button, you'll know exactly when the next episode is live. And number 3, if you head on over to Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to podcasts and leave a 5-star rating and review. Thank you so much in advance. I appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next episode.